So we're here after the AOPA Policy Forum, and we want to start with finding out a little bit about your Forrest Stump and the experiences with the 1,500 miles and all of that you and Natalie have had.
Yeah, I mean it's been a whirlwind adventure. Well, I'll start way back when I was 10 years old. I was diagnosed with bone cancer, and had my first chemo treatment on Halloween. I was dressed up as a jailbird, hooked up to the chemo drugs, and just thinking about that, just brings back this memory. But from that date, and then in December, just a couple months later, we made the decision that in order to save my life, we had to amputate my leg. And so I had my leg amputated on Martin Luther King Day that year, which was a really special day in my heart. But by that June, I'd already I'd beaten cancer. My hair is starting to grow back a little bit, and now I'm kind of going up against the challenge of having to deal with a prosthetic. And the only thing I really wanted to do that summer was to go play in the water with my friends, because I grew up in Michigan, and the Great Lakes up there. So, but what I learned was that my leg wasn't waterproof, and so I was really bummed about that. And so my family wrote into insurance, and they said, can we get Nicole a waterproof leg so that she can play with her friends, so that she can go to water parks, so that she can shower with it, so this doesn't have to be a limitation that she faces for the rest of her life. And insurance wrote back and said, it's a convenience item, it's not medically necessary. And so we didn't really push it or, do anything about it, because we just thought, no meant no. And also at that point, my family had already gone through a lot of medical bills, and so we didn't have the money to pay for it out of pocket. So that was kind of the first experience that I had in terms of the prosthetic realm and not being able to access the care that I needed. And then when I was 16, I started playing softball, and I started getting really active and running 5Ks. My leg would break down a lot, and so we also started seeing in the media a lot of running blades, and so we tried to get one of those, and again were denied. But it wasn't really until this past year that I got really just kind of fed up with the system and the fact that I've been dealing with the same barriers over and over again for 16 years. And I was having this new leg built, and we were trying to find a different technology that would be covered by insurance, but that would allow me to continue running half marathons and bike races and 5Ks and everything. And 26 appointments a year later, I basically had to settle for the same technology that I'd had for the past 5 years. And then not only that, but add in all the different healthcare conversations that are going around, and add in the thing that happened in New York with the One Limb for Life, which basically said that amputees were only going to be guaranteed, one limb for their entire life. And that got me really fired up, and I was like, we've got to do something about this. And I felt very lucky, and I felt like, I've saved my, I have my life, I have a great education, and I want to be able to use that to make a difference. And so we were kind of brainstorming, okay, what can we do? And I'm like, well, I'm super active, so it's definitely going to be something, athletic. And we were talking about running across the country, and we're like, oh, we thought of Forrest Gump and that story, and so that's where the name Forrest Stump came about. But I love more than just running. I love to run, I love to swim, I love to bike, and so that's where we wanted to make it a triathlon down the West Coast, because we felt like, well, no one's really done a triathlon down the West Coast. Let's start in Seattle, let's end in San Diego. And so our first 2 days were these 100-mile rides. We had to swim across the Columbia River as the Columbia River Gorge fire was breaking out. I'm literally swimming, 1.6 miles, and the ash is falling down on me while I'm swimming. Swam underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, biked huge amounts of elevation and miles, and then finally, well, at that point, then I had to replace my foot on my leg because it actually broke. And that was one of the main concerns I had too at the beginning was, I just had this leg built, 1,500 miles later, is it going to still be usable, or am I going to now not have a leg because it's the only leg that I have? But luckily Endolight was able to donate a foot, and so we've replaced it with that. And then when we got to San Diego, the Challenged Athletes Foundation and OSER and Microsoft teamed up, and they donated a running blade to me. And the presentation of that they called me up on stage, and I thought I was just going to talk about Forrest Stump and like some of our journey. And then they present this to me, and you can just imagine, like, I was bawling my eyes out on stage in front of everybody, and my family's in the crowd, and they're bawling their eyes out. And I mean, just to have access, or to have someone, you know, recognize me and say, like, you're worthy of this technology was, you know, really emotional for me to come to that point. I'm going to try not to cry thinking about it.
Okay, emotional. I'm going to cry.
But I mean, more people deserve that opportunity, and that's why I feel like, you know, I can't stop doing what I'm doing, and why we can't stop doing what we're doing is more amputees need access to that. And you know, I think a big thing that a lot of people don't realize, you know, you see ads every day with Paralympians or amputees who have access to these amazing technologies, or you might see a TED Talk with Amy Purdy who has, you know, 12 legs, or other people who, or other veterans who might have 5 legs. And I've had people come up to me and say, like, hey, can I see your other legs? I'm like, no, like, this is the only one I got. You know, it's $15,000. If I wanted, you know, a running blade, it would cost $20,000, and I'd have to pay for it out of pocket. And I think a lot of people just don't realize that that's the reality for the average amputee. And you know, I have to give a shout out to Natalie and to my whole team that you know, helped make this happen. You know, Natalie, and then my mom and my friend Kathleen, but Natalie actually helped build this leg, and that's what allowed me to carry me 1,500 miles down the coast. And it's a recognition of the talent that goes into the field, and the importance of, you know, looking at the industry from many different perspectives, and seeing that the issues that affect me, you know, it's not just about, you know, paying for a leg, it's about empowering the prosthetists and the clinicians and the business people to make sure that they have the resources to be able to provide these kinds of limbs.
I was going to just ask you, Natalie, what your experience was like in terms of being both the support mechanism in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
I
would have loved to be the mechanic behind the scenes in the car, you know, just driving alongside, but that wasn't going to happen. So I was on a bike the whole time with Nicole, well, except for a short duration. But that's, you can see that in the documentary, I'm sure. But I commend Nicole for the idea of Forrest Stump, just because the whole goal wasn't out of a place of selfishness. Like, she had faced the same barriers over and over and over and over for 16 years, but we didn't set out to get attention or raise money for herself. We didn't set out to get a running blade. It was all a bigger scope. So as a prosthetist, I'm new into the field, but it doesn't take long to kind of discover where we can implement some change. So I was able to provide some information and some advice on how we're going to make a bigger impact, and that's through policy, which is exactly why we're here. Forrest Stump, aligning with AOPA, aligning with Amputee Coalition, that's the only way we're going to be able to make a change, and it's going to come through policy. There are certain people in little niches that have access to prosthetic technology that's appropriate, but it's not universal. It's not for everyone. And that's all we're advocating for, is for appropriate technology given to amputees that's really going to make an impact in their lives. We're not advocating for every amputee to get a running blade, because that's not appropriate. We're not advocating for every single amputee out there to get a microprocessor knee, or the most expensive, or the most beautiful, realistic looking things. We're just asking for what's appropriate, and that the technology that's available be accessible for all amputees. So that's kind of the mission statement of Forrest Stump. And I found out that this 1,500-mile journey is probably the first of many crazy things that I've signed up for. Being part of Forrest Stump and knowing Nicole and having a very close relationship with Nicole. So I'm sure she's got more things pondering.
On my sleeves.
I welcome those.
I bet you had great meetings today.
Oh yeah.
We did.
Oh,
Yeah.
You know, I have a really good friend that's done the Ironman, and he's
yeah.
he's done triathlons his whole life, and I have never heard him say that, boy, I was really worried at the end of that race I wouldn't have my leg.
Yeah.
And I think that statement right there just hit me so hard. I think today, I don't know, in your meetings today, it's like we've had this conversation about medically necessary. How about life necessary?
Yeah.
What's my life necessary means for, do I want to finish this 15-mile race, or, you know, a 3-mile swim and worry that I don't have my leg.
Right.
I think,
Yeah.
and it's there, so the devices that we're talking about here are, and you have someone in the insurance world who is viewing paper information. They may have photos of you being fit in the office, but they don't have photos of you living your life. Your documentary, which is going to be phenomenal, because that will tell the picture. I was in tears when you were telling your story earlier. I think that's what it's all about, and I'm sure that came across today. I hope it did.
Yeah.
I'm feeling it now, so I'm sure it did.
So for a lot of what we had done down the coast and the things that we had learned, like I'm kind of using Natalie as my earpiece to kind of figure out, well, why are the things the way they are? But everything just started to fall into place yesterday when we started talking about the specific legislation, the specific issues, hearing from so many different people about the challenges that are out there, and actually things that we can advocate for to make change. And today, a lot of the conversation surrounded the fact that the things that we want changed are these foundational building blocks within prosthetics and within orthotics. And this morning, we had a really fantastic conversation with Representative Susan Delbaney. And so being from Washington, living in Bothell, like we connected with her on education. We connected with her about, prosthetics. I took my leg off. I handed it to her. She's kind of looking at it, and like
Never had one of these meetings before, right?
Yeah, and she's like, well, why isn't it waterproof? Like, she was really curious. She was asking questions, and then her aide let us know that his sister actually works or is a student in orthotics and prosthetics. And so then it started to come out in the conversation, these connections that people have. And we only had maybe like 10, 15 minutes with her, and she had to run out to do a vote. But it was powerful just within that amount of time, and the information we were able to get across to her because we were so well prepared from the day before. But she, you could tell that she connected with the issue, and I felt very empowered to tell my story, but then also to be surrounded by people who could back me up and give me, their perspective, and the Improvements Act, Veterans Choice, and also, the thing that I really connected with was the Wounded Warriors Enhancement Act too, like fueling education for people like Natalie. But we also had a really great meeting after that person. So the next person was the legislative aide named Nico Jansen for Senator Cantwell. And, he was, again, I took my leg off in every single meeting, and I handed it to a person to hold, because I really wanted them to, like, see it and feel it. And I got emotional in that meeting, and, I could tell that he was really connected with me in the issue, too. And, we talked to him about, in April, David Boone set aside a week, and we invited them, or Senator Cantwell, to come, and let's have an open house, and like we'll come and talk and speak with her. And he sounded really interested in that, and we talked about the different issues, and then he was able to kind of synthesize the various things that we had said, and say, like, what I'm hearing from you are these issues that are happening in other areas. And so it really resonated with him on a broader scale about the challenges within prosthetics and amputees that are also being faced by other people in healthcare, which was that was a great meeting.
You can't imagine the platform that sets. I've met with Nico before, but I know the meeting will be different the next time because he's had the experience of walking through this with you. So that's a side of this that we miss, I think.
Yeah, and just talking to him about the fact that the offices is right across the way from Cardin, and to build that trying collaboration together is really important, and kind of setting the stage for potential to move these things forward.
So you've brought your advocacy here. Is there anything, this is a kind of debriefing, any suggestions either you or Natalie has about how we could do this better, how we could engage more people in doing this?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that I've heard today kind of as a theme from multiple people is the concept of getting younger people involved, and people that are my age, Natalie's age, involved in this type of this type of work, because these are the people who are going to have, I mean, there's a lot of movements going on right now, people that want to get out there and want to be active in politics and really make a stance for these type of things. And so that, if there's some, you know, to try and make, I mean, prosthetics are already sexy, you know, in terms of like Toyota and, you know, the ads that they do, or the Paralympians, and the more that we can get some of these, you know, big time amputees that people know about, to speak out about these issues, the more people that we're going to draw in. And we got to find people that aren't just amputees. We need to find people that are in the field, that are prosthetists, that are orthotists, but even beyond that, people who are triathletes, people who are advocates for education, people who are advocates for human rights, like expanding the pot so that people see this issue and say, like, hey, this isn't right. Like, I want Nicole to be able to have a leg so that she can run with me. And we need to be able to expand this message to more people. And so I think we need to build up some sort of, you know, groundswell and a movement of sorts, and get more young people involved.
Well, maybe we can coordinate with you both for next year. I'm sure there are a lot of young people who are interested in your story.
Yeah.
And maybe we could engage some of those folks to be part of this advocacy.
I mean, for me, I've been an amputee for 16 years, and you know, nothing resonates more with me than the fact that I had my amputation on Martin Luther King Day. And a speech that he gave was the fierce urgency of now, and us getting more involved, and us, you know, for me as an amputee, I don't want to wait any longer to have access to these things. And I think we can all band together and use a collective voice. And, you know, my voice is very small in the amputee world. There's only 2 million of us, and that's a very small percentage compared to the number of people that are out there. And so we need more people to advocate and help lift my voice up. And so I want to invite people to come with me to DC as part of Forrest Stump, as part of AOPA, to advocate for prosthetics and orthotics, and push some policy forward that's going to open access to technology and to care, and to really empower people in their lives.